In the heart of Anatolia, beneath Cappadocia, where fairy chimneys have silently reached for the sky for millennia, lies a secret that defies the imagination of the modern world. A massive city, beginning just a few meters below the surface and descending a full 18 stories deep into the earth. A metropolis carved from stone, with the capacity to house more than 20,000 people, complete with its churches, schools, stables, wineries, and even cemeteries. Its name is Derinkuyu. So who could have possibly built this mind-boggling underground labyrinth, and why? Just think, why did these people choose to abandon the beauties of life on the surface and live in dim corridors for generations? Conventional explanations suggest they were early Christians fleeing Roman soldiers. But this feels like the mere pains of searching for a logical explanation. But let's stop and think for a moment. Does it truly make sense to build an 18-story city, 85 meters deep, just to hide from soldiers? Or were the founders of Derinkuyu fleeing a threat far greater, far more terrifying? A threat that came from the sky. So fasten your seatbelts, because we are diving into today's mystery. But first, if you like and subscribe before this video ends, your chances of discovering a secret in the depths of this ancient city might just increase. The story began in 1963 in a rather ordinary way. A man living in Derinkuyu was renovating his basement when he knocked down a simple wall. His expectation was to find nothing but soil and rock behind it. But when the rubble of the wall settled on the floor, a passage stretching into darkness appeared before him. The first thing the man felt was a cool, musty air that had been trapped for thousands of years, seeping from the hole. This wasn't the air of his cellar. This was the breath of history itself. Hesitantly, with the flickering light of his gas lamp, he took his first steps into the darkness. Stunned by what he saw, he reported the situation to his neighbors and local authorities. But initially, no one wanted to believe him. However, when curiosity overcame fear and the first brave explorers squeezed through that narrow passage, one of Cappadocia's greatest secrets had begun to surface. Every step he took led him deeper, into more complex corridors. Rooms opened into other rooms, tunnels into larger halls. It soon became clear that this was not a cellar belonging to a single house, but just one part of a massive network spreading beneath the entire town. When archaeologists arrived and comprehensive excavations began, the true scale and complexity of Derinkuyu stunned the world. This was not just a settlement. It was a self-sufficient, living organism. Reaching a depth of 85 meters from the surface, roughly the height of a 30-story building, this city pushed the limits of human engineering. There were schools inside. Missionary schools where children were educated under dim light, with crosses carved into the walls. There were living quarters for families, communal kitchens, and even churches where they confessed their sins. But the structure held even more astonishing details. Stables large enough to house herds of animals, wineries where grapes were crushed and turned into wine, and even cemetery areas where they honorably buried their dead. Everything was designed for long-term survival, completely isolated from the world above. So, what does official history tell us? According to the most widely accepted theory, the Derinkuyu underground city was used as a shelter by early Christians fleeing the persecution of the Roman Empire and later, during the Arab-Byzantine Wars in the 7th and 8th centuries. Historically, this makes sense. Cappadocia, known as Caesarea in that era, was one of the most important Christian centers of the Roman Empire. And thus, a place where persecution was felt most intensely. Important religious figures like Saint Basil lived in these lands. According to this theory, Christian communities expanded pre-existing small caves to create these underground cities to protect themselves from periodic raids by Roman soldiers or local marauders. This theory explains the existence of churches and religious symbols in the city. However, some features of the structure and its mind-boggling scale challenge this simple explanation. This brings us to the layers of the mystery, the investigation and evidence. First, let's consider the city's defense system. The passages between the floors of Derinkuyu were sealed with massive, wheel-shaped stone doors, each weighing half a ton, which could only be locked from the inside. These doors fit perfectly into a corridor and, once closed, were impossible to open from the outside. These doors were not just simple barriers, they were psychological weapons. An army outside, realizing the impossibility of moving this giant stone, would have no choice but to wait for those inside to surrender. For those inside, however, this door meant severing the final tie to the outside world, the making of an irreversible decision. A hole in the center was likely for spearing the enemy at a safe distance. This is an effective defense, but how long could Roman legionaries or raiders wait in front of a stone door? Weeks? Months? The city's design seems planned to withstand a siege lasting for months, perhaps even years. Even more astonishing is the ventilation system. There are more than 50 massive ventilation shafts, providing a constant supply of fresh air even to the deepest point of the city, 85 meters down. The engineering of these shafts is so flawless that they are thought to be designed to prevent smoke or poison gas from seeping in, even during the most severe storms on the surface. This requires incredible engineering knowledge. How did they plan this complex network, working in perfect harmony, by carving soft volcanic tuff with only simple hand tools? And why did they need to bring fresh air so deep? These ventilation shafts also functioned as wells. This allowed the city's water needs to be met by groundwater, ensuring the inhabitants never had to go to the surface for water. Huge storerooms for food supplies, separate shelters for animals. Every detail points to a long-term isolation scenario, completely cut off from the outside world. And what about the social order? Archaeologists speculate that certain areas may have been reserved exclusively for the ruling or clerical class, and that some narrow, isolated rooms might have been used as dungeons for those who broke the rules. What kind of laws did a society that held thousands of people together for months have to maintain internal order? This was not just a shelter. It was a functioning underground state. No matter how severe the Roman persecution was it persistent enough to necessitate such a complex civilization? This is where we descend into the deepest layer of the mystery. What if the real purpose of Derinkuyu was not to hide from Romans or other armies? What if these people were fleeing a non-human threat? The city's design is geared towards providing maximum protection, not against a threat from the ground, but against a threat from the sky, from the surface. The doors locking only from the inside, the narrow and defensible ventilation shafts. Everything was designed to keep something out. This brings us to the grand theory. Derinkuyu was not just a shelter. It was a survival capsule carved from stone, an underground ark. Its builders, perhaps members of a forgotten civilization that existed even before the Hittites, were aware of an impending apocalypse. This apocalypse was not an army or an empire. It was a global catastrophe that threatened all life on Earth. Perhaps it was an intense meteor shower, a massive volcanic eruption that covered the sky with ash for months or years, or a celestial body that approached the planet's orbit dangerously close. Perhaps it was a violent solar flare from the sun that could annihilate all life on the surface. In such a scenario, the surface of the Earth would become uninhabitable, the atmosphere poisoned, and the only way to survive would be to take refuge deep underground. This perfectly explains why they went so deep, why they established a self-sufficient ecosystem, and why they prepared for such a long-term isolation. They were not hiding from humanity, but from nature itself, perhaps even from the cosmos. This underground ark theory strangely aligns with myths from other ancient cultures around the world. The Hopi have legends of their ancestors being led into underground shelters by ant people to survive two great global cataclysms. Sumerian tablets contain stories of gods warning certain humans before a great flood. What if Derinkuyu is not just a local story, but the Anatolian embodiment of that great cataclysm fear in humanity's collective memory? More radical theories even suggest this threat could have been extraterrestrial. An invasion by a hostile species with advanced technology? The war of the gods from the heavens, as mentioned by ancient astronaut theorists? While these theories cannot be proven, it doesn't change the fact that Derinkuyu's architecture reflects an obsession with total protection from whatever was happening on the surface. Today, Derinkuyu is a fascinating archaeological site on the UNESCO World Heritage list, welcoming tourists from all over the world. However, the part open to visitors is only a small percentage of the city's total size. What secrets lie in the unexcavated lower levels, behind locked rooms? How many more underground cities are yet to be discovered in this region? Some researchers claim that these cities under Cappadocia might be interconnected by tunnels, forming a massive underground network capable of housing hundreds of thousands of people. To even think about the incredible will behind this project, the generations of labor, and most importantly, the immense fear that drove them to undertake such a task, is enough to send shivers down one's spine. The true purpose of Derinkuyu may forever remain a secret. But with its silent corridors carved into volcanic tuff, it continues to whisper a message to us that we struggle to comprehend with our modern minds. It stands there as a stone monument, showing us how deeply our ancestors feared something we have forgotten, and the mind-boggling lengths they went to in order to survive. If what you've heard has made you pause, even for a moment, to reflect on the buried mysteries of history and the fears of our ancestors, don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to continue exploring hidden truths and untold stories with us, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We'll see you in the next story.